House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy is a liar. He is lying about his dealings with the White House regarding the insurrection, the gravest attack on the Capitol and U.S. democracy in over a century. And he is lying about what his own shifting positions are for what to do about it with the power he has as a leader on this important matter. Now, that's the top story based on the explosive new tapes rocking Washington. But as you can imagine, the smoking gun tapes first aired on TV last night, which revealed so much of this, are quickly stoking other developments and questions about whether McCarthy can hold on to his job leading the Republican Party in the House. They're months out from midterms where he could be in line to become the next speaker if they take back the House. And the headlines are roaring across Washington all day today about whether Kevin McCarthy is already toast. The facts show that McCarthy was so concerned about Trump leading the insurrection that he thought Trump should be ousted before the Biden inaugural on January 20th. And he was actively discussing and exploring ways to do that. He was blasting Trump's actions as unacceptable and, quote, indefensible. He was discussing if Trump would try to get a criminal pardon, which shows us that in those tense first days before politics bias or self-interest clouded his judgment again, that in private, McCarthy didn't think there was much to be investigated, that he already viewed Donald Trump's actions leading up to and on the 6th as clearly criminal. And yet against all that, just yesterday, McCarthy was still denying all of the reporting I just mentioned as, quote, totally false and wrong. He may have been betting this would go down as another clash of journalists and sources versus a politician, and that it would land in a kind of a gray area of perception, especially for his voters and Republicans who are so used to attacking anything coming out of the press. He clearly was not betting that someone in his inner circle had the receipts, had the smoking gun tapes, like McCarthy sang in this secret call that GOP leadership was discussing in private, that they thought was private at the time, that they surely never expected to come out, saying things like this just days after the insurrection.
I've had it with this guy. What he did is unacceptable. Nobody can defend that, and nobody should defend it.
So McCarthy's very recent denials up and through this week are themselves the thing that are, quote, totally false and wrong. It's what he's saying about this, and he is stuck with that statement. He's not just lying to you as a news viewer or a citizen. He's also lying to every single Republican in his district and around the country. He's lying to them. Now, this has been quite a story, even if you think, well, I kind of knew some of this because we've shown you that in those early days in January, McCarthy in public also was saying Donald Trump was partly responsible for this, which is obviously true. Now he's walked it back. So what's new here and important is not just the facts of it, but how basically culpable, guilty so many of these top Republicans look as it is revealed to the world and to their supporters what they really thought at the time. And that means they've put something else other than national security, democracy, and propriety, something else in charge. Now, these tapes first broke last night on MSNBC. I mentioned the New York Times reporters, and Rachel was explaining all of it.
This is where we're going to make some news here tonight. The problem with these denials from Mr. McCarthy and his office is that we have now obtained audio of that January 10th phone call that Leader McCarthy held with other top Republicans, in which he, in fact, said he's going to call Trump and tell him that he must resign.
There you have it. Rachel reporting on that. The tapes and the underlying sources there are from this new book you may have heard about, This Will Not Pass, by two New York Times journalists. The secret calls were 5 days after the insurrection. They revealed the top Republicans there saying they privately were pressing Trump on his responsibility.
Well, let me be very clear to all of you, and I've been very clear to the president. He bears responsibilities for his words and actions. No ifs, ands, or buts. I asked him personally today, does he hold responsibility for what happened? Does he feel bad about what happened? He told me he does have some responsibility for what happened. And he needs to acknowledge that.
This goes well beyond the lies. It shows the Republican Party is led by people like Mr. McCarthy, who privately, secretly saw the insurrection for what it was, a terrible Trump-fueled attack on democracy. And then people who buckled and put their own political interests above What they said privately was their concern about democracy itself. Under pressure, McCarthy bowing to Trump and then fighting against an independent bipartisan probe of this attack. Very rarely is it also clearly exposed in public. I want to bring in NYU law professor Melissa Murray and Bulwark editor-at-large Bill Kristol. Bill, you, Melissa, our viewers might say, well, we did know some of this, and yet it feels significant enough to potentially dislodge Mr. McCarthy, which we'll get to. But before we get to the political fallout, I turn to you on the substance of it. What does it mean that they knew it was this bad?
Well, it was this bad. It was evidently this bad, even to Trump supporters, even to Kevin McCarthy, who 3 days before, those tapes 4 days before maybe, had voted to overturn the elections, right? He was one of the 140 House Republicans who voted to throw out the electors in Pennsylvania. So Kevin McCarthy's not some kind of anti-Trump guy. I mean, but he knew what had happened was wrong. And of course, he'll get in trouble now for having told the truth. You know, one additional thing, just to your excellent setup there, he also says in the course of the conversation, I think something about, I don't want to, Trump should quit, but I don't want to get involved in the middle of pardoning, having Pence pardon him, something like that, right? Which suggests, which I don't quite know, he's concerned maybe that he would be doing something inappropriate. Trump would say, okay, I'll quit if you can arrange a pardon, and McCarthy doesn't want to be in the middle of that, which for kind of obvious reasons. But it shows that McCarthy kind of basically believes Donald Trump committed crimes. What are you pardoned for? You know, you're pardoned for criminal acts, as Richard Nixon was. I'm sure that was in his mind, you know, however many years, almost 50 years ago. So that also suggests that they knew the gravity of what Trump had done.